it's mute.
पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद वाजिल फरजहुम. We're going to start the program, the 3rd of Muharram Majlis, with the recitation of the Holy Quran, for which I would like to call on Muhammad Siddiqui to please come and recite the tilawat of the Quran, please. For Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لم يكن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين منفكين حتى تأتيهم البينة رسول من الله يتلو صحفا مطهرة فيها كتب قيمة وما تفرق الذين أوتوا الكتاب إلا من بعد ما جاءتهم البينة وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء يقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك لمن خشي ربه صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
Jazakallah khair. On, I'd like to recite a loud salawat for the tawfiqat of On and all the efforts his parents have been putting in. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We have a speech, a quick 5-minute speech from one of our sisters. She is a student of the Sunday school. So Zainab Zahra, if you can please turn on the mic.
وآل محمد لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا ومولانا أبو القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد Today, I'd like to take my focus on Ziyarat-e-Ashura. What is Ziyarat-e-Ashura? Ziyarat-e-Ashura is a ziyarat where we send our salams to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his children, his brothers, and his companions. We send curses to the ones who martyred them without any mercy. Now, I'll tell you the miracles of Ziyarat-e-Ashura. One day in a city, this horrible disease spread among the people. There were new cases of deaths every day. The scholars had all assembled at Ayatollah Syed Muhammad Fasharki's house, their teacher. All of them were going around discussing about this epidemic and how it was taking people's lives at a very risky rate. One of the scholars asked, "Do you have any suggestions on opposing the epidemic?" Ayatollah Fasharki replied, "I command the Shias of Samara to recite Ziyarat-e-Ashura for 10 days straight, then offer the reward to Imam Zamana." All the Shias followed the instructions. Sooner the deaths of the Mu'mineen had subsided. The other religions were confused and were later on revealed to this technique. In this, we figure out that Ziyarat-e-Ashura also helps us with the worldly problems. There was a man named Muhammad Ali Yazdi. He was considered a very pious man. He had a habit of visiting cemeteries at night and doing lots of acts of worship there. Ali Yazdi had a friend whom he do everything with. They studied together, started their business together, and were barely seen apart. Unexpectedly, his friend had passed away and was buried where Ali Yazdi went to. It had barely been a month when Ali Yazdi saw his friend in a dream. He was seen in a very calm and peaceful manner. Ali Yazdi was confused and asked him, "What's the cause of your comfort when you both know of acts which would cause punishments in the hereafter?" "Yeah, you're right. Until yesterday I was in a lot of pain and agony until an incident occurred. There was a woman who was buried in this cemetery. After the burial, Sayyid the Shuhada came to meet her grave. 'Cause of her, I was also benefited. That's why you're seeing me like this." Ali Yazdi woke up and immediately went to search for anyone related to this woman. After a while, he found the woman's husband. He was asking if he had buried his wife recently. The man had replied yes, and Ali Yazdi questioned if the woman had visited Imam Hussein's shrine. The man replied no. Did she often talk about the Imam's hardships? He replied no. The man was confused and then asked the reason for all the questions. Ali Yazdi revealed his dream, and the man replied with that, "I might know the reason. In the last days of her life, she would regularly recite Ziyarat-e-Ashura. This is an example of how Ziyarat-e-Ashura helps us spiritually." Now let's go on to the reason for Ziyarat-e-Ashura, the martyrdom of our Imam and his companions. The Imam went to his camp and saw all the bodies of his companions lying on the floor. He saw the bodies of his beloved, all of them killed in front of him. He then started calling his companions, "O Abbas, O Ali Akbar, O Habib ibn Mazahir, O Anna Muhammad, why is it I called you and don't receive an answer? If you're sleeping, I urge you to wake up. The granddaughters of Rasulullah are soon to be attacked. I urge you to wake up and defend them from the enemies approaching." He then repeated these lines, "Hal min nasir yansuruna, is there any helper to help us?" He returned back to the tents, a voice coming from one of the tents. It was none other than Imam Zain al-Abidin. He requested for a sword and a stick. "Why a stick, so I may stand up, and a sword, so I may defend my father?" Imam Hussain replied, "You indeed are the most pure and noble lineage after me." He came towards the Bibis and told them to pledge allegiance to Imam Zain al-Abidin, as he was the Imam after him. Imam Hussain came out onto the battlefield facing the opposition. He said, "O people, Allah was angry with the Jews when they made Uzair the son of God. Allah was angry with the Christians when they made Isa the son of God. Allah was angry with the Magians for worshipping the sun and the moon. Allah will also be angry when you kill the son of the daughter of the Prophet. But I won't give in to your call. Rather, I'll meet my Lord with his beard dyed in blood." He went back to the tent. Seeing the woman crying, he advised, "Stay patient as Allah is with you." His sister Bibi Zainab gave him his horse to mount. He was on to the battlefield when Bibi Zainab called him back. "O son of Zahra, what is it, my dear sister?" She kissed Imam Hussain on his chest, a command from our mother. Umar ibn Sa'd saw this and told his men to start shooting arrows. The Imam saw that the tents were going to be attacked. He left the tent and went to the opposition. He came onto the battlefield facing thousands. He fought the opposition, piercing them one by one. He returned to the tents for a final goodbye. Seeing his daughter Sakina, he embraced Sakina in a hug and began to walk out. He was now fighting valiantly when Umar ordered to all launch all their arrows and attack him with whatever they could. They were throwing rocks and arrows at the Imam. A man shot an arrow on the Imam's forehead. The blood began pouring on his eyes. He removed the helmet and his armor. The pain was too much and he fell on the ground. The Imam was flooded with arrows. He laid on the ground reciting supplications. An army of Yazid had the intention of beheading Hussein. As I was about to behead him, he started saying how he was the grandson of Muhammad. The way he was talking, I couldn't take it and went back. Shimr came closer and pulled the Imam's beard. Taking out his dagger, he gripped the Imam's neck and struck his neck 12 times. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allahumma salli ala
Muhammad, Jazakallah khair Zainab. Please recite aloud salawat for the tawfiqat of Sister Zainab. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'd like to now invite another Sunday school student, Hasnan Moment, to please come and recite a salam for us. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद बुलंद सलवात हाय हाय अली अकबर हाय हाय अली अकबर कहती सियमा खो बड़ी मई याद से लिपट कर हाय हाय अली अकबर हाय हाय अली अकबर अरमानता है नाऊंगी पोशाक शहानी अफसोस के राज आई न तुझ को ये जवानी कैसा सा मुकद्दर है अली अकबर कहती थी अम्मा खो बड़ी मई याद से लिपट कर है अली अकबर इतना तो जरा तहरे तुम्हें दुल्हा बना लूं बस एक झलक शहर की सुग राखो दिखा लूं बेचैन सी ख्वाहिश है अली अकबर है अली अकबर 18 बरस पार की पर वान चढ़ाया वो गेसु वाला है मेरा खूह में नहाया ये क्या हुआ दिलबर है अली अकबर कहती थी अम्मा खो बड़ी मई याद से लिपट कर है अली अकबर है अली अकबर माँ तेरी जुदाई में भला कैसे जिएगी मर जाएगी सुगरा जो खबर तेरी सुनेगी अब क्या करूँ जी कर है अली अकबर है अली अकबर करती सी जियारत में पयम बर की तुझी से अब अगर मैं किसे दूँ कि मैं तश भी है नबी से हम शक्ल पैगंबर हाय हाय अली अकबर कहती सी माँ खो बड़ी मैं याद से लिपट कर हाय हाय अली अकबर हाय हाय अली अकबर पहले तो एक आवाज पे उठ जाते थे बेटा अब इतनी सदाओं पे भी पहलू नहीं बदला क्या हो गया दिलबर हाय हाय अली अकबर कहती सी माँ खो बड़ी मैं याद से लिपट कर हाय हाय अली अकबर हाय हाय अली अकबर तुम हिचकिया ले के जो दम तोड़ रहे हो मुँह माँ से हमेशा के लिए मोड़ रहे हो क्यों रूठे हो दिलबर हाय हाय अली अकबर कहती सी माँ खो बड़ी मैं याद से लिपट कर हाय हाय अली अकबर आए जो हमें लूटन खेमे में सितमगर माँ देगी सदाए अली अकबर छिन जाएगी चादर हाय हाय अली अकबर कहती सी माँ खो बड़ी मैं याद से लिपट कर हाय हाय अली अकबर जब कोई जवालाश नजर आती है महशर एक याद सुए कर वो बला जाती है महशर दिल रोता है कह कर हाय हाय अली अकबर कहती सी माँ खो बड़ी मैं याद से लिपट कर हाय हाय अली अकबर मोहम्मद वाल मोहम्मद बुलंद सलवात
Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Jazakallah khair. Yes, then, please recite a loud salawat for the tawfiqat of On, Zainab, as well as Hasnan, who are all Sunday school students and have partaken today. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I would also encourage everyone to move a couple of steps forward. We have a small gathering right now, but it gets really big around 8:30, so please move forward. And every day we are starting the program right at 7:30. So if you're listening from home or if you're on your way or if you hear this later, please make sure that you're coming at 7:30 because we are starting at 7:30 sharp. Before I invite the Moulana Zain, who we're blessed to have, we should all be proud of the fact that we have Muharram. Every year we have Muharram, and we have the ability to practice Muharram how we like. There are many brothers and sisters around the world who do not have this opportunity. So please avail this opportunity and come and commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussain and learn from his lessons. Please recite a loud salawat and welcome Maulana Zain Ahmed Hasnie to the member. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
Please recite Surah Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all the youth who are participating in these majalis. And really the honor is ours, that we have the honor to take part in this Azadari and remember Imam Hussein and mention him. So it's an honor for me to be addressing you. And inshallah, may Allah give all of you tawfiq and all of you the ajr and the thawab for your services, inshallah. Please cite a salawat for all of the youth. So yesterday we started talking about some of the tricks that shaitan uses in order to put us in his traps, and we looked at a few verses of the Quran, and we got to his trick where he puts fear in the hearts of the believers, right? When a believer wants to do something good, okay, he tries to dissuade them, tries to prevent them from doing that good so that they don't reach that perfection that we were talking about, right? So we looked at a verse, and then we looked at some stories. So inshallah today as well we'll do something similar. We'll look at a few more verses and talk about a few more stories, inshallah, just so the message it sits in. Okay. So the verse that we looked at yesterday was from Surah Al-Baqarah, so the second surah, verse number 268, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء. The shaitan, he promises you poverty, he promises faqr to you, and he commands you towards indecency, towards evil. Okay. So now the context of this verse is in giving charity, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the verses before this talks about charity. For example, there's a verse which says that those who give charity, it's becomes manifold for them. Allah makes it, it's like one seed which has many grows up, has many branches, more and more seeds are there. That's the example of charity in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. And then we come to this verse which says that shaitan, he tries to dissuade us from giving in the way of Allah, right? And thereby, getting a lot of thawab, getting a lot, reaching our perfection, basically, right? And he promises us fear. He puts fear in his heart that okay, if you give money, then you won't have enough money for yourself. If you spend in the way of Allah, what about your family? Okay, what about your children? Maybe you should save instead for 10 years down. Okay, instead of this person in need, no, save it for yourself. Okay. So he tries to put this fear in our hearts, and he calls us towards indecency. Now over here, there's a discussion of what is the relation between promising us poverty and trying to scare us from spending in the way of Allah, and fahsha, and indecency. So one possibility is this, that when we become scared of spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we are, when shaitan succeeds in scaring us, okay, then we don't spend in the way of Allah, and thereby we don't purify our own selves as well, right? So then this indecency is in our own self, that we become stingy. Our souls become stingy, and that is what the fahsha, that is what the indecency in the verse is talking about. Another possibility is this, that this fahsha is in society. So now, when there are poor people in society, when there's needy people in society, and we're not spending for them, then it leads to indecency in society as well. Okay. Now there are these poor people, and they want to make a living. So what do? They start looking for haram ways of making a living. They steal, for example. They cheat other people. Okay, or other haram ways that are there to make enough money for themselves. So when a society becomes such that there is no charity, then it goes towards indecency as well. And perhaps if you think of societies back home, it'll become more clear the point, right? That because there is a lot of poverty, it leads a lot of people into indecency. Okay. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadla. Whereas Allah, He promises you forgiveness and fazl, an increase, okay, and His mercy to you. Wallahu wasi'un alim, and Allah is the all-expansive and He is the knowledgeable, right? So now if I spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first and foremost, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's going to pay me back. He says that in the verses as well, that either in this world, but definitely in the next world, right? That there will be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who will make up for what I've spent in His way. So He is wasi', He is all-expansive, there is no limits to what He can do, and He is all-knowledgeable as well. He is alim, right? So now if I spend in the way of Allah, it's not the case that, He's going to forget, okay? Forgetfulness doesn't come over Him. He knows everything, and He is going to, keep that record for us as well, that if we spend in His way. Now yesterday we started talking about a certain Shaheed Ibrahim Hadi. Again, I urge the youth for sure, but everyone, the older generation as well, to read up about him. Okay, a very, very amazing person. Every time I read, his book, I have two feelings. One is I feel ashamed of myself. One is I feel, inspired to be like him. And I ask you, brothers and sisters, to inshallah read about him. And know this Shaheed. And it's appropriate to talk about, Shuhada as well. These majalis are for Sayyid al-Shuhada, the master of those who were Shaheed, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his companions. And then we can look at the contemporary Shuhada as well. Those who, if they were in the time of Imam Hussain, I believe that they would have supported Imam Hussain. They would have been amongst those who were Shaheed with him. And you can see that with their character as well. Okay, inshallah, be inspired and pray to Allah that we are like them as well. So one point we mentioned about Shaheed Ibrahim Hadi was that in his life choices, he didn't let shaitan come in and kind of scare him for spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So he would spend from his wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he would also, the choices that he made in life, it would be in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Right? So he could have been a professional athlete, he could have been, a professional wrestler and a professional volleyball player. Like people say that about him, that he was so good at both these sports, right? But he didn't choose to do that, and he would have been very rich. He would have been very famous. Instead, he chose to be a teacher of just a regular school teacher. Why? Because he realized that the kids, they were being misguided, and that it was his responsibility to be there for them and try to guide as many youth as he could, right? So he chose not such a kind of glamorous career. Okay, he didn't become anybody famous because of his career, right? He just chose to be a teacher, but he was a very good teacher as well, right? The kids really liked him. He was able to influence them. But you see that when after the revolution, when the war starts between Iran and Iraq, Shaheed Ibrahim Hadi, he realizes that now his responsibility is not to teach anymore, but rather to go on the war front. That now this newly made Islamic nation, it needs somebody to protect it, right? And he has to go on the war front, and that's his responsibility. So now he gave away that career as well, and went on the war front, right? And eventually, inshallah, we look at more of his stories in the days to come, he becomes Shaheed over there as well. And he becomes Shaheed such that he becomes Shaheed, what they call Shaheed Gumnam, right? A Shaheed that didn't find his body, and to this day we don't know where his body is. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So Shaheed Ibrahim Hadi, he had this feeling in him that he wants to help people. He wants to spend in the way of people. Okay, there's this one story where he is with his friend, and they're on a motorcycle, and they're going, and they see this old man. Okay. And the old man, they start talking to him, and they realize that, he is in need. He's somebody who is very much in need of some money, okay? So Shaykh Ibrahim, he looks in his pockets, in his jacket pocket and everything, and he doesn't find anything to give to this old man. So then he asks his friend. He asks him, okay, do you have something that we can give to this old man? So the friend looks inside his pocket and he said, no, I don't have anything, right? So then Shaykh Ibrahim says, no, please, look again. Try to find something for this guy. And his friend looks again and he has nothing either. So what could they do? They just apologize to this old man and they say, we don't have anything for you, and they go on. Now his friend says that I notice, so he's driving, his friend, he's driving the motorcycle, and he looks in the mirror and he notices that Shaykh Ibrahim is weeping, like tears flowing down his eyes. Okay. So he says to Ibrahim Hadi that, okay, we couldn't do anything. Like if we had some money, we would have given it to him, but we didn't have it, so it's not our responsibility. Shaykh Ibrahim says, that's true, but I still feel really bad that somebody needed help and I wasn't able to help him. Okay. So this is what he was like. And we're told that afterwards, whenever he would leave his home, he would make sure that he has some money with him. Just so if somebody was to ask him for some money, he was able to help them out. Okay. So he really, really, really liked kind of serving the people, giving in the way of people. For example, there is this one story where his friend from the army, so this is now, it's the time that he has joined the army, and they're on leave, right? So he's back in the city. His friend tells this story that, his friend says that I was standing on the road and I had to go home now. He's coming back from the war front. But he hadn't gotten his payment. He hadn't gotten his salary yet. So he had no money with him. And he was thinking that, okay, what should I do? My family is waiting. I have a wife, I have kids. They're expecting me to come back. They're expecting me to be, bring them some money. And what about rent? I have to pay rent as well. I have no money. What am I going to do? I can't even go to anybody else. Right? So he's thinking that, and he's like, no, I can't go home like this. Right? I can't go home like this. And while he's standing there, he says that, lo and behold, Shaykh Ibrahim, he comes on his motorcycle, and he sees that, it's his friend from the war front, and he's standing there, so he stops, and they talk, and he asks him, okay, did you get paid yet? So his friend says that, no, I didn't get paid yet. But it's okay, nothing's wrong. So Shaykh Ibrahim says, oh, okay, here, take some money from me. Right? And his friend tries to refuse it, and he's like, no, I can't take this, I can't do this. But Shaykh Ibrahim insists, and he says that, okay, how about when you get paid, you pay me back. Okay. And now his friend, he's able to now take some money and go to his family and pay his rent and all those things, right? So, and he says that, and he thinks that, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sent Shaykh Ibrahim to help him out in this, in this difficult situation. And there's many, many stories like that of Shaykh Ibrahim. For example, there is another story where Shaykh Ibrahim, he comes to his friend and he asks his friend, okay, your car, are you using it this afternoon? And his friend says, no, it's free, I'm not using it. So he asks him, can I borrow your car? He says, sure. So then Shaykh Ibrahim takes the car and he brings it back in the evening. And his friend, he asks him, okay, what did you need the car for? And he says, I was going to drive it as a taxi. And he's like surprised. He's like, why do you need to drive it, as a taxi? Right? Like, you don't need to drive it as a taxi. So then Shaykh Ibrahim says that, no, it's fine. It's for nothing. And then he asks him, okay, do you have any extra food, extra rice, extra oil in your house? So then he says, yeah, there's some extra. So then they take it and they go together. And then Shaykh Ibrahim goes to the store and he buys more, supplies, groceries. And then he realizes that, okay, the money that Shaykh Ibrahim made while driving as a taxi, he's using that money to buy all of these things. And then they go and they give all of those things away to the poor, right? So Shaykh Ibrahim, he was like this, that any opportunity that he could get, he would try to spend that for something that he can gain in the next life, right? He was somebody who was focused on the next life, right? And he wouldn't let shaitan come in over here and kind of be like, no, you need this money for yourself. What about your own self, right? Maybe you should buy something for yourself. Maybe you're the one who should have a car, right? So no, he was such that he was worried about the next world and he invested in the life to come. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So our scholars, they tell us that Well, religion, obviously there is that part where we pray, we fast, we come to the majalis, and all of those things are very, very important in their own place. Reciting the Quran, reciting the dua, everything is very, very important, okay? But that is not all that religion is. There is something more to Islam than just praying and fasting. The religious person isn't just the one who has a tasbih in his hand, and all those things are good, right? Recite, doing zikr of Allah, all of those things are good, right? But that's not all what religion is, okay? A big part of it is helping people in need, right? And, our imams, they lived like this, where they used to help people in need, right? The Prophet was like this, right? And they've encouraged us to be like this as well, helping people in need. So much so that, it's something that is very, very, very beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the believers, they help other believers in need. And not just the believers, they help non-believers as well, right? Not just non-believers, they help non-humans, right? So animals, right? So this is what Islam is like, that the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a believer is supposed to have, in his heart, in her heart, pain for their suffering as well, right? And there's a very, very surprising story, an eye-opening story that the scholars they shared with us, and inshallah I'll share with you, brothers and sisters as well. So it's about a scholar. His name was Syed Muhammad Baqir Shafti, and he was, lived maybe about 200 years ago. And he was somebody who was very, very influential in Isfahan, in the city of Isfahan. He was somebody very, very well known, extremely wealthy. He used to spend in the way of Allah as well, right? So we're told that poor people would come to him and he would just give them money and he wouldn't even see how much he's giving them, right? He was so influential that the king at the time, he couldn't make a decision about Isfahan without the support of Sayyid Shafti, okay? And in his knowledge as well, he was very, very knowledgeable. So he himself tells, that how did he get to this, stage? How did he get so much wealth and so much ilm, so much knowledge, so much piety? And he says that one day what happened was that when he was a student, he was extremely poor, right? Extremely, extremely poor, so much so that, he didn't have too much to eat at all. And he was, he would be so weak that he would, sometimes he would faint, right? And he says that, I decided one day that, okay, I need to buy some meat because I thought that it might be wajib on me to buy some meat and eat it because I'm getting so weak. Because it's wajib for us to take care of our bodies, right? And one version of the story says that, he borrowed some money from his friend and he goes and he buys some meat, right? So now he hasn't eaten, properly for many, many days. He's weak and he's, very, very, frail. And when he has bought this meat, he's going back to his, his madrasa where he lives, and he sees that there is a dog, okay? And the dog is, on the ground, is very, very weak, and the dog has 3 pups as well, and she doesn't have any milk for them, and they're just, on the ground. And so he says that my heart really felt really sad for this animal. And over here, somebody else might have thought that, okay, and if somebody else was in his spot, he would thought that, okay, I'm a student of religion, the ummah needs me, and I'm gonna spend, eat this meat myself. I'm gonna spend this on myself, right? And this is a dog. It's a stray dog as well. It's probably gonna die in a few years anyway. It's not so important. I'm more important over here. Somebody could have thought that, but Sayyid Shafti right away he goes and he gives that meat to that animal. And the animal eats that meat, and then it's able to, give milk to its pups. And we're told that from then on, Sayyid Shafti, he has this, amazing kind of ability in learning that he didn't have before. And we're also told that somebody sends him money from his hometown of Shaft in Iran. At this time, we're told that he was in Najaf. And the person tells him that, okay, you're not allowed to spend this money on yourself. Rather, you're supposed to give this money to some businessman, and they're supposed to invest this for you. And then they're supposed to give that money for, whatever they make from that money to you. And he says that from that money, he became extremely, extremely rich in the years to come, right? So much so that, as we said, that he was very, very influential in the city of Isfahan when he moves back to Isfahan. So we see that he helps out, not even a believer, not even a human, but an animal in need. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is such, and He cares about His creation such that He rewards the Sayyid Shafti in this manner. That he raises his status in this world and in the next world. So this is the importance of spending in the way of Allah on the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal. So the next verse that we want to look at is from Surah Ali Imran, verse 173. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم. So it's talking about believers, okay? And the context is the battle of Uhud. After the battle of Uhud, right? So we're told that in the battle of Uhud, the Muslims, they were defeated, right? That in Badr they won, but when they fought against the kuffar, the mushrikeen in Uhud, they were not victorious, okay? So this is the context of the verse. It's talking about the believers, saying that that when people say to them, Inna nasa qad jama'u lakum fakhshawhum, that certainly the people, they have all gathered against you, fear them, right? Therefore fear them. That you are few and so many enemies have gathered against you, have fear of them. فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. This increases these believers in their iman. Their iman increases over here. And they say, sufficient is for us is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's the best of supporters. Okay, so they're not when these people they come and they try to scare them that the superpowers have all gathered against you. There's so many of them. There's so few of you. Okay, it increases them on their iman, and they say Allah is our supporter. They realize that our responsibility is to take a stand against the disbelievers. Okay, the enemy that is coming. And it doesn't matter if you're few, Allah is going to support us. And then, so I'll skip the next verse. But the verse after that, verse number 175, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَ. That these people, they're shaitan, right? And shaitan, and they scare their friends. Okay, so the people who are in support of shaitan, so either the verse is saying that shaitan uses them to scare you, okay, or that shaitan himself scares you, or one possibility is also that the verse is saying that these people who are scaring you, they are in reality shaitan as well, right? And inshallah we'll look at some of these verses where shaitan is not just iblis, right? Rather, there are other jinn that are shaitan, and there are other human beings who are shaitan as well. Right? The Quran says that some human beings are shaitan as well. So the verse could be pointing to any of these, but the point is this, that shaitan tries to scare us. Okay? And this is shaitan who is trying to scare us. That the responsibility of the believers here is that they take a stand. They take a stand against the enemy. And shaitan, he comes through different means and he tries to dissuade the believers and says that it's too many of them. You don't have enough power. You don't have enough military strength. You don't have enough numbers. Okay, and be afraid of them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the same verse, فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ وَخَافُونِي إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. But don't be afraid of them. Rather be afraid of me if you're believers. Right? So believers, they don't fall in this trap of shaitan. They don't get scared of shaitan. Rather, they are only afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they realize that, okay, yes, in the apparent, it might seem that we are outnumbered. In the apparent, in the battle of Uhud, they were outnumbered as well. That the apparent causes seem like they're against us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has power over everything, and He can support us, and if He supports us, then we are victorious. Okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So now, Shaitan, his trick is that he tries to make us afraid. Whenever we want to do our responsibility towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tries to put fear in our hearts through different means, right? The responsibility can be, as we talked about, spending in the way of Allah. He'll try to make us afraid of being poor. Okay, it could be other things as well. For example, one example is doing amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. Okay, yes, praying, in a sense, is easy, right? You stand up, you pray, you don't have anything to do with anybody. But when it comes to nahy anil munkar, it becomes a little bit harder in that sense that now you're supposed to go and face somebody and tell them that, okay, what is happening is supposed to change. What you're doing, that's not Islamic. Okay? And it's possible that they don't react too well. It's possible that, they don't like it, right? It's possible that you become famous as a person who is, very, very religious in society, and people say that guy is too religious, we don't want to go near him, right? All of these things are possible. But in certain cases, it's our responsibility to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. Okay, Imam Hussain, we are told that one of the reasons that he did his qiyam, that he stood up, was to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar, was to change society. The society was going on a path that was against Islam. Things were happening in society that were, against Islam. And Imam Hussain says that I wanted to bring this change in the ummah, and I wanted it to bring it back on the right path. Okay, so this was one of the goals of the Imam. So now in certain cases, it is our responsibility as well to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. The evil that is happening, we have to take a stand against it as well. Okay, but Shaitan over here, he comes and he tries to make us afraid as well. But as believers, we have to keep this in mind, that this is from Shaitan. And we are supposed to not become afraid when it's our responsibility towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have realized that this is our responsibility, then we try to not fall in his trap. So over here, I want to mention another movie reference, just so we can, inshallah, we understand the point. And this, state of not being afraid, it doesn't come in us. That we are more we have more courage, right? So again, we'll go back to one of my favorite movies, which is Lord of the Rings, and one of my favorite scenes. So I don't know if you've seen the movie, but basically in the Fellowship of the Ring, the first, in the trilogy, there's right at the end, there's a scene when Frodo Baggins, so he has this task of taking the ring and destroying it, right? And right near the end, what happens is that the Fellowship, there's this group of 9 of them, and they're supposed to take this ring together and destroy it. The Fellowship is broken apart, right? The enemy attacks and they're killed, and now Frodo is standing by himself, right? And he's a hobbit, so he's not very powerful. He doesn't have any military training or anything like that, and he has this, very, very heavy task that he's supposed to accomplish. Okay, and he's afraid. He has this ring in his hand, he's on his own, he's standing in front of this lake, and he remembers what he, these thoughts, okay? And he remembers he said this to Gandalf. Gandalf was, again, he was one of the characters in the movie, and if you look at the movie closely, he's supposed to represent a prophet kind of figure in the story, right? So Gandalf is supposed to be like a prophet, okay? And if you look at the story as well, there's a lot of religious themes in there, and there's a lot of Tawheedi themes in there as well. Okay, so now Frodo is standing, and he thinks to himself that I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. Right, this responsibility I wish didn't come to me. And then he remembers what Gandalf told him, and Gandalf says, "It is not for us to decide what is going to come to us. All we have to decide is what we have to do with the time that is given to us." Right. So basically saying that the responsibility to us is decided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the different responsibilities. Okay? And now there's no point being scared here. Can I do this? Can I not do this? What we have to do is realize this is our responsibility and do our best. Okay? And if we do our best, then inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will support us as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So one person who was very, very kind of had this courage in him in contemporary times, and he has to be mentioned, was Imam Khomeini. Okay. Now, Imam Khomeini, and you know, you can see that in his life as well, that he took this stand against the superpowers of the world, okay, and it was a strong stance, okay, and he was not scared. There's this one story, before the revolution, we were told that Imam Khomeini, he was caught by the secret police in Iran, the Savak, okay. I think he gave a speech against the Shah, and he was caught, and they were taking him in this car, right? And he says that at that time, he wasn't scared, but these, you know, the guards who had caught him, they were scared. They were like, okay, what is going to happen? And he says that I was the one giving them kind of, you know, reassurance that it'll be fine, don't worry, right? And he says that at one time that they turned into this field, and he says I was sure that you know, this will be it, this will be the end, that they're going to assassinate him, okay? And he says that at that time I looked within myself, and I saw that there is no fear there, right? So Imam Khomeini, like, if you look at his speeches as well, and you know, if you look at his speeches, this is, you know, old man, you know, like bent down, talking slowly and in a soft voice, right? You know, like he doesn't seem very kind of like somebody who's very kind of scary. He's not giving these fiery speeches, okay? But he was such that we're told in one incident, so basically what he does is he writes a letter to the Soviet Union. And at that time, Soviet Union, it was like a superpower, right? And he invites them towards Islam. So I think the foreign minister of the Soviet Union, or the ambassador, I'm not sure who, he comes and he gives the reply back to this letter, okay? And they basically, you know, make excuses and rejects Imam Khomeini's call towards Islam. But we're told that in that meeting, that, you know, this envoy of the Soviet Union, the superpower, his legs were shaking in front of Imam Khomeini, okay? And it's on video as well. You know, this meeting between Imam Khomeini and this ambassador. And Imam Khomeini, he listens to the reply of the letter, he gets up and he leaves. And you're talking about, you know, one of the superpowers of the world, and Imam Khomeini just gets up and he leaves. So you see that he had that courage, that when he realized the responsibility from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there was no fear, okay? Now when we look at ourselves, and we see that, you know, at certain times, okay, we know that there are these role models. Imam Hussein, he was not afraid. When he realized certain thing was his responsibility, he went for it. He knew that his family was going to be killed. He still did his responsibility. There was no fear. We see that, you know, the likes of Imam Khomeini, that he is sitting with these guards with these guns. He has no fear. They're the ones who are afraid. And then when you look at ourselves, we see that, okay, it's not the case, okay? Yes, there is courage sometimes, but sometimes when it comes to do the responsibility, there is fear in my heart as well, okay? Now, what I want to say over here is that it's not black and white. It's not the case that you're either like, you know, Imam Hussein, or you're, you know, you're basically nothing. It's not like this. Most of us are somewhere in the middle, and what we have to do is slowly remind ourselves of these role models, okay? When a task comes and we feel afraid, then not, you know, remind ourselves over here that, okay, you know, our Imam wasn't like this. Our Imam would stand up and try to not let this fear that shaitan wants to put in our heart come in our heart, okay? And slowly, inshallah, we'll realize that we're less and less afraid. And inshallah, Allah will give more and more courage to us as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, inshallah, the individual from Karbala that I want to look at today is Khur. Okay, and generally, Khur, he's remembered on this day of Muharram. And Khur is basically the archetype for us for forgiveness, right? Asking for forgiveness. How one can turn so quickly back towards the right path and reach a very high status. We're told that Khur is the one that when Imam Hussein was making his way towards Kufa, that he comes and he stops the Imam on his way, right? And he's the one who takes the Imam, instead of going towards Kufa, he takes them towards Karbala instead, okay? And there's this one incident over here where Hur, the Imam wants to go towards Kufa, and Hur he stops him, right? He grabs the horse, right? And over here, Imam, he asks him to let go, and Hur he refuses. And the Imam says to him over here, "May your mother weep over you, O Hur." And we see something in Hur over here, which we are told is probably what saved him later on. Okay, and Hur he says to the Imam that if anybody else had said this to me, I would have said the same thing back to him, but I can't say the same thing back to you. Your mother is Fatimatul Zahra. Your mother is the daughter of the Prophet. I can't say anything bad about her. So you see that he has this respect for Lady Fatima. He has this love for the Ahlul Bayt. So the day of Ashura, it arrives, and we're told that Hur is seen afraid on this day, right? He's seen fearful on this day. He realizes that he is the cause for Imam Hussain and his family being trapped in Karbala. He is the cause that these children don't have any water. So now somebody sees Hur and he goes to him and he says, "Oh Hur, if I was asked who is one of the most courageous people in this battlefield, I would have named you as one of them. Why do I see you so afraid? Why are you so afraid?" And Hur says that I see myself between heaven and hell. This is what I see. And by Allah, I will never choose anything over heaven, even if I'm cut in pieces and even if I'm burnt. So now we're told that Hur, he comes towards the camp of Imam Hussain, and he is in a state of lowliness, he in the state of shame. He says, "Ilahi ilayka anabtu, O Allah, towards you I turn. Fatub alay, turn back towards me. Certainly I have put fear in the heart of your awliya. I've put the fear in the heart of the Imam of the time, and I have put fear in the heart of the son of the daughter of the Prophet." And he comes to the Imam, and you're told, he asks that, "Is there forgiveness for me, O Imam? What I have done is very evil. Is there any forgiveness for me?" And Imam right away, he says, "Yes, that Allah is going to forgive you." It is that easy, brothers and sisters. If we turn towards Allah, it is that easy. Our sins are not bigger than Hur's sin. So we're told that he goes out and he fights fiercely, and finally he's killed. And Imam Hussain, he comes to his side and he says, "Anta hurrun kama summiyat fi dunya wal akhirah," that you are free just like you have been named in this world and in the hereafter. It is said that it's Hur's respect for Fatima that saved him. But O Hur, if you were only present in Karbala when all the men had been killed, and there was no one left to defend the house of the Prophet. Fire was brought, camps were raided, and hijabs were snatched from the daughters of Zahra. Ala la'natullahi ala al-zalimin wa say'alamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun. Please recite a salawat. I just want to make a quick announcement that inshallah after Salat Maghrib and Isha today, there will be a question and answer session. Moulana Faizi will be here, Sheikh Salim Bhimji will be here, and I myself will be here as well. So inshallah I encourage both the brothers and sisters to inshallah remain after Salat, and there will be a session for question and answers. Also, I just want to say that I myself am present here after the speech. So if anybody wants to speak to me privately, brothers or sisters, I'm here. You can just call me out from the speech and ask your questions. Or the sisters, you can ask one of